Hello everyone, and welcome to Dark Natter. Hello listeners, welcome to Dark Natter, the podcast where we dissect your favourite sinister creations. I'm John Richter, writer of crime and horror thrillers, so I'm into this stuff.
And I'm Liam Martin, I'm a journalist with a history of horror.
You murdered a few people, didn't you?
I've murdered a few people, yeah.
You paid your debt to
Absolutely,
society.
yeah. Paid my debt, you know, and I'm rehabilitated. So.
That's good to hear, actually. Yeah. I'm pleased, because I was worried I'd have to fend you off.
Well, we are in your apartment, so I'm more worried about you.
Yes, I've got all my sinister array of traps, weapons lined up to spring on you at any... This has taken a dark turn, which is good, because that's where we want it to go.
This is the theme of the show.
So hopefully...
Horror.
Yeah. Horror and...
darkness.
Stuff that's cool.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Horrible things from the world of fiction.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So maybe we should clarify the premise for our new listeners, because this is a pilot.
I think that's a good idea.
Have a clue what's going on.
Absolutely.
So just to explain what we're here for, this represents the kick-off, the commencement, the inaugural episode of The Hall of Pain. Needs a jingle. The Hall of Pain. That was good. That was,
I don't know. I think I could do better. But,
shivers. Yeah. Do you want another go?
That was terrible.
Like Krusty the Clown.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
My dad. So Hall of Pain. I reckon we can do better than that as a name.
Yes, I agree. Yeah. Well, we've thrown about a few names.
Yeah.
The podcast was originally going to be called Dark Stains, but I'm not
you could have had the Hall of Stain.
That was the idea, yeah.
But then that's got... Does that really have the horror connotations? No. Dark Stains...
Dark Natter is a better name. It's a better name.
Dark Stains is more spillages.
Yes.
And like really persistent sort of carpet issues.
Something that happened to me a long time ago when I was at school.
And during the murder spree as well.
Absolutely, dark stains.
To get rid of all those blood stains.
I shat myself, is what I was saying. That was the story, but yeah.
And that's it. That's what we're here. That's the end of the show.
So
yes, dark things.
Yes,
so every
natter.
week we're going to natter about a dark subject.
Yes.
From fiction. So these are creations that have been spawned by humanity.
Yep.
We're not going to go into real life dark things.
No.
Because they're kind of less fun, aren't they? Because usually people have suffered murder again. Like, we're not going to talk about your crimes.
Did you say usually they're less fun?
Yeah. Let me think about
we have to rewind that. I'm not sure if you said that or not.
We can edit that bit out. We're not really sadistic and insane.
Usually works of fiction.
More enjoyable.
Yes.
For all concerned. No one really got killed, dismembered, mutilated, turned into a zombie, eaten by a shark, etc.
That's some good ideas there for
future
episodes. Yeah.
In fact, let's make a note of that because Jaws just popped up there in my head. Oh no, spoiler. So yes, we will discuss one topic per show until we've wrung every last drop of darkness out of it and vitriol and gore. Yes, yep. That too. Whatever's in there, we're going to wring it out. That's the point.
Dark matter.
So, one of us will pitch to t'other an idea, a concept. It might be a book, might be a movie, might be a video game, might be the complete works of who knows. And we need to sell our case for why this thing belongs in the Hall of Pain, has justified its entry into that illustrious, hallowed, fictitious, non-existent hall.
Albeit, we are open to suggestions about a name for a better hall.
Yes, if you can come up with a better thing that rhymes with fame that we can call our all, then we'll take it.
Yeah, something completely different, who knows.
And any suggestions for future topics will be very welcome as well.
Yeah,
we'll provide details later when we've made them up of how you can contact us.
Yeah.
We haven't got that far yet.
Come visit us in prison. Or,
exactly, yeah. You can make contact with Liam through his solicitor. Or through one of the benevolent funds that's been set up for your victims. There's a number of ways.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, I'm just looking at my notes that I made in Excel, interestingly. Went for Excel approach. Yeah. Say hello. Did we do that?
Yep, I think we did.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
We introduced selves.
Yes, we did.
Our current real selves. We didn't introduce any other selves. We can bring them in later. Explain concept. We've done that.
Yeah, you may still be confused. We are. We're still working it out. But
it's a start.
It'll sort itself out. Don't worry.
So, whose turn is it? I think we agreed it was going to be your turn to pitch the first inaugural idea. And we're going to go for a pretty broad one here. Something that a hugely popular figure, albeit I would say somewhat divisive. Somewhat. Yeah, well, I've got to pretend I don't know what it's going to be. So I don't know who you mean.
Inconsistent. I would say that, but
fascinating.
I should be. You should be pitching to me right now because I'm basically burying this guy. But we're going to talk today about Stephen King.
Ooh.
One of my favourite authors. Hopefully, or not, maybe one of your favourite authors as well. But Stephen King. Stephen Edwin King.
Richard Bachman.
Or Richard Bachman. Actually, we could do that as a separate episode.
Okay.
Richard Bachman.
I don't really know much about his Bachman days. Was that The Running Man?
Well, I've read a couple of them actually, fairly recently, and I'll be honest, I'm not sold on the Bachman books.
Okay.
Yeah.
So noticeably different then?
Yeah, well, I don't know whether it was just the era or not, whether he was just... This was King in a slightly different era where he's maybe a bit more inconsistent. But the Bachman books, I've not really enjoyed them as much as I have, when you think of the iconic Stephen King books, you don't really put like Roadworks, The Running Man. The Running Man is pretty cool, but I don't know. I just don't
make it into that pantheon.
No, they're not carrying
these big hitters.
Yeah, Salem's Lot, and
so maybe we should step. I think that's a big hitter to open the series
I think
with,
so,
isn't it?
Yeah.
We might go into some slightly more niche territory in the future, but
absolutely,
it seems fitting that he's arguably the master of horror.
Well, he is, he is, and I think he is, and as much as I say I think he's inconsistent, I'm a huge fan of his, and I have a chat with a friend of mine whenever I read a book that I'm not really enjoying that much. And did you ever get that when you read something and it's just a bit of a chore to get through?
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I've got a Kindle at the moment, and so I've got I've got maybe 24 books backed up for the future. And when I'm reading something that I'm not enjoying and it's just a real slog, I'll always go on to a Stephen King book after, because I know it's easily digestible.
So he's your default setting
really
reading material.
Absolutely, yeah, he really is.
Which says you must enjoy it. You must enjoy it because you'd always kind of prefer it to whatever other shite you're reading at the moment.
Exactly, yeah. I always go back to Stephen King.
Shall we maybe, just to take a step back, for any listeners who have somehow never heard of Stephen King, because they're still working their way through all the Bachman books, they haven't got that far yet, or
they've given up on him.
They've been living in some sort of rose-tinted, horror-free, perfumed, weird alternate world, a
world that I don't want to live in.
Exactly. Who does? What is how could we have? You can't appreciate anything if you don't have the dark underbelly, can you? So
absolutely.
So Stephen Edwin King, as you rightly. Not that I'm reading this from Wikipedia, of course. I know this off by heart. Was born September the 21st in 1947.
Oh wow!
So he is. I can't do the maths. There you go. 70 odd. Good on him. Looking good for his age.
Looking good.
Based on this photo of him when he was
from 20 years ago.
When he was a baby. He's an American author of horror, supernatural fiction, suspense, science fiction, and fantasy. His books have sold more than 350 million copies. Right. And of course, as we all know, many of which have been adapted to feature films, miniseries, television series, and comic books. A total of 58 novels. That includes the 7 Richard Bachman books, as well as 6 non-fiction books, one of which I have read, which was Dance Macabre, which was his dissection, discussion of the art of horror. So he looked into sort of what makes great horror, and that was where he was talking about, you've got, well, let me try and remember this, a quick digression. There are, if you can't get people with that kind of dread, then you need to sort of shock them. So it was almost like the pinnacle of horror was that real slow build feeling of kind of psychological dread. Yeah. If you can't manage that, then you go for like a jump scare. Yeah. And if you can't even manage that, you go for what he calls the gross out. So just, eyeballs hanging out of your arse and, melting penises.
Well, funny enough, because I thought you were going to say On Writing, because I've read that one, and I think I mentioned it to you once, and it's yeah, it doesn't really go into the art of horror, but it does. It actually just genuinely does provide some really good tips on just how to write and just the process of writing as well.
I should probably read that then. Yeah, that might help with my sales.
Yeah, it's really good. But I suppose if you read both of them together, you would be able to write a really good horror.
If only. So, If only I thought of that years ago. Wouldn't have been blundering around. I wouldn't have to make this podcast with you. Yeah. To earn money. Not that we have a sponsor yet. We could just invent a fictional sponsor just to get it off the ground. Sponsored by Tesco. Every little bit of horror helps. That needs work. So, Stephen King, we touched on the fact that we keep alluding to these really big, famous, well-known books that he has written. Yeah. They're iconic. They've completely kind of permeated into the global psyche. Instantly recognisable. Lots of them made into films. Over to you. What do you consider to be some of the peak of his works?
Well, funnily enough, because I didn't start reading Stephen King until a little bit later on, and probably in my 20s actually, the first time I read, because I was so familiar with his work just through film. Growing up, I always used to really my horror origin story. It's all about movies. My dad always used to rent out horror films, and my sister and I would, just sneak up and watch them when he was asleep. And so most of my sort of early Stephen King memories are from the films, which are actually massively inconsistent, and we could do a whole another show on that. So yeah, and I kind of felt like Carrie, I think, is an excellent horror film. The Shining is an excellent horror film.
It's ace. For whatever reason,
he hates it, but I love it.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I've forgotten about that he hates The Shining, because it's a blooming masterpiece, isn't it?
It's incredible.
It's horrible.
And even the old It 2-part miniseries. Now, I actually watched this again recently with a new film coming out. And I still think Tim Curry is just...
He's better, isn't he? I think he's loads better.
I think he's loads better. But the film itself, it doesn't age that well. It's little bit shit, yeah. It turns out it was because it was made for TV, and so they were kind of limited in what they could do. But as a kid,
terrifying.
I thought it was fucking terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying. So The Shining as well, because I watched... I'll be making up a number for how old I was when I watched them, but relatively young, 12 or something or whatever. Yeah. And I remember there aren't many things I watched around about that age that were more properly, terrifyingly traumatic.
Well, you talk about building up the tension and the sense of dread. The Shining is just a great example, and that's the film we're talking about. I mean, we'll get on to the book in a minute. But as I say, so I was kind of so familiar with his work that I almost didn't feel the need to read his books. And I've always been an avid reader, but I just didn't really feel the need to read Stephen King's book. I thought, well, I might as well just read something else, because I know exactly what's going to happen in Carrie and The Shining and Pet Sematary and whatnot.
And it's funny, actually, because I've only seen probably sort of the big movies, so I haven't watched...
I've watched a lot of them, like Christine and...
I'm struggling to even think of any examples, but there you go. Yeah, so the more niche
sometimes
ones,
they come back. Yeah,
I just haven't seen.
Yeah,
so maybe there's more motivation there for me to read King's stuff because I haven't seen it in movie. Because, for example, I haven't read The Shining for the same logic because I've seen the films. So what's the point?
Yeah.
I know they're very different. I know that, and I know there's obviously a lot of people who are listen to this who would be screaming.
They probably stopped listening right now because we just committed
they probably preemptively stopped listening before they tuned in.
As soon as I admitted to not reading one into my 20s, my credibility just went out the window. Oh. Having said that, though, when I did start reading King, I haven't stopped, and even if I've read the films now, I want to see read. I just want to read it on because you get so much more from the book. And I know it's the old cliche, like the book's so much better than film, but it really truly is. Yeah. And I think, especially in this case of Stephen King, because there have been some terrible adaptations.
Yeah.
But and then his new stuff as well. We'll maybe get onto that in a minute. But I think at the moment he's in a rich vein of form. And if you go back and read those iconic books like Carrie, It, I mean, it's unbelievable. Actually, it's hilarious watching the film after reading the book.
The only one the one that springs to mind of his real sort of, again, I know exactly. That's what I was going to say. Brilliant. That, yeah. So it's, and again, I know that word, kind of iconic, classic. People bandy these tongues about, don't they? But you can't get much more than things like The Shining, The Stand is brilliant. That sort of dystopian, post-apocalyptic setting where everyone's dying and the world's all gone to shit, which is usually then followed up by some sort of zombie outbreak. But I've never seen or read it depicted better than in The Stand. It's the best. Yeah. It's the best world's fucked story, and that's only the opening. In effect, that's like the first however much of it. Let's call it the first third of the book is about the kind of deterioration and the sort of resetting of the world to then form the. In effect, the kind of factions that are then going to war for its...
Collide,
and that's the whole next bit of it, and then we'll come into that separately with Randall Flagg and so on. We should spoiler. Should we do spoiler alerts? Maybe we should. We'll come...
I think if you're listening to a Stephen King podcast, then you can probably expect spoilers, but maybe we'll add one.
We'll flag them. We'll have a little...
Randall flag them.
Hey! That's all. It's been worthwhile. This 20 minutes has been worth it. We'll Randall flag them. So yes, The Stand.
Yes,
it's ace. And read it.
And actually, that reminded me, because that is another one that there's a TV miniseries of The Stand. I don't know if you've seen it.
No.
Molly Ringwald's in it. Oh God, what's the guy? He was in like the 80s, like Brat Pack. Rob Lowe.
Oh,
he's in it.
Yeah, I actually know what you mean. I wouldn't have got the name.
Yeah, there's some big actors in it. The guy from Twin Peaks, the guy who played Miguel Ferreira.
Do you like me Twin Peaks
very
t-shirt?
Nice, very nice. Yeah. I'm not wearing any clothes, but Dave.
I thought I'd wear.
He's just wearing a t-shirt.
Yeah, we thought we'd have one t-shirt between us, like those things. Is it the grey that have like one eyeball, and one tooth, like that, but with one pair of pants?
Yeah. Anyway, it's. It's this TV miniseries, and technically, it's a bit like it doesn't age well. If you were to watch it now, you would think, God, this is terrible. But I saw it when I was very young, and so I didn't feel the need to read The Stand. And what a massive mistake that was, because it's so much better.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
The miniseries.
And the guys,
albeit I would recommend watching it because I kind of weirdly enjoy it.
Let's do that later.
Yeah, a watch along. Yeah, we'll do a watch along.
Just to clarify, Liam and I don't live together.
No,
we're not going to like snuggle up and watch the stuff. Well, we might still do that.
Yeah, we may do.
It'll be in like a really manly, platonic way.
Yes,
that we cuddle in our pants later. Sorry to distract you with that lovely image.
I think you asked a question about 20 minutes ago about what do I consider like the.
Yeah, I think we've gone with the cat. Carrie,
yes.
The Shining,
yes.
The Stand,
yes.
It. Already some belter. Pet Sematary we touched on.
Yes.
I have read that. The bit of Pet Sematary, and again, spoiler alert, that really stuck with me was the guy's son dies, and he decides to go and dig up the body because he's going to bury it in the pet cemetery because he believes that will then sort of resurrect, it did with the cat, and with hideous results. But there's a bit when he's driving, he's had to forcibly bend his son's frozen rigor mortis corpse to get it on the back seat, still in the body bag that it's in, or that he's put it in, I can't remember. And it suddenly occurs to him that he might have just fucked up and bent it the wrong way. So his son might be lying with his face pressed into the seat and his legs bent backwards and then snapped downwards at the knee. So he's driving along with all this shit going through his head that he might have just bent his son's legs the wrong way. I found that very harrowing. And then, of course, he does bury him in it, with...
We all know what happens there.
Mirth and hilarity ensues. Any other big hitting books? Or, in that case, I may move on to another Stephen King sort of... body of work.
Well, I was probably going to say what you were about to say, but go on.
Which is, of course, the Dark Tower series.
Yeah.
All of which I have read.
Yes.
This is where the inconsistency comes in, maybe.
Yeah.
So he completed those over a set span of several decades.
Yes.
The first one he wrote when he was very young, and it was a bit of a one-off.
And the first one I think is okay, but
it's okay. It's a great sort of setting, and feel,
but it doesn't necessarily grab you by the balls and hook you in. It doesn't necessarily make you want to read on. I don't think, anyway.
I like the desolate.
I like it. I like it.
Wasteland,
but
really
I didn't feel
lonely.
compelled to instantly go out and read the second book in the Dark Tower. Albeit that is probably my favourite one.
Interesting you should say that. I think you're probably right there.
Yeah.
Is that the drawing of the three?
Yes, yeah.
Where he sort of acquires his messed up companions for the rest of the kind of journey.
I think it's
brilliant.
Yeah, really,
it's great.
Really good. Yeah,
and maybe we'll try and avoid spoilers on that one, but agree completely.
Yeah.
And then I find the rest of the series a bit up and down.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common. I think as a body of work, I think most people agree that it's pretty special. But I think if you were to analyse the book by book, I think it's inconsistent, and that actually I think is kind of true of a lot of Stephen King's work, sort of post 80s. I mean, he'd probably admit it himself, but
I find him to be a little bit self-indulgent, and that's perhaps most exemplified in the Dark Tower, when there's a sort of he writes himself into the narrative. I get that that's kind of a fun thing to do, and if anyone's earned the right to do that, and it fits with the story, it's not a complete frivolous. But I'm just not sure it was that enjoyable to read. It just didn't quite work for me, that idea. So that series, there were some points in it when I found myself, I can't be arsed with this, I'm maybe losing it. But I've read 5 books already, so I may as well play one. And then something really cool would happen.
I think that's a fair criticism.
And of course, our old mate Randall Flagg reappears in the...
And this, I think, is what I love most about Stephen King and about the Dark Tower in general. It's the whole sort of mythology of it, and if you read, there are so much nods to other works of his in various books. Pennywise the Clown, and the Dark Tower is a perfect example of that, where Randall Flagg, and for me that's just fascinating, and I would happily read a book just for one page with a mention of Randall Flagg in, just like, oh shit, he's bigger than just The Stand. And so that's what really makes me love that series.
He's created a properly
a universe,
entwined world of it's awesome, and you can't do that without having a big body of he's got we've already talked about a staggering number of books that he's written. It takes that sort of prolific output to even begin to have a chance to create something, and his whole world that he's kind of created centered around Maine is an amazing achievement, isn't it?
However, this, like you said about being self-indulgent, I think this is another criticism, is perhaps Stephen King goes to the well one too many times, as the old saying goes. I always have a joke with a friend of mine about, if we're reading a Stephen King book, is the main character, an alcoholic teacher with,
who lives in Maine.
Yeah, because he does kind of write what you know, I suppose.
Yeah, and that is, and obviously as a massively inferior writer to King, but it's the same thing. You have that challenge of, do you want to write something you write something you feel you can write better, but in a more informed basis. You're not kind of winging it and researching.
Isn't your latest book about sex robots, Dave? Write what you know.
Point proven. You know what I mean? Because that you're insinuating there either that I regularly utilise sex robots or that I am a sex robot.
Yep.
And I'll leave it up to the listeners to work out which one of those is true.
Yeah, sex robot with a tiny penis.
Novelty robot.
Niche sex robot. But yeah, I think that's the other problem with Stephen King as well, is that this is another criticism I hear a lot. His endings aren't always great.
I read Doctor Sleep recently and I thought it was a bit shit.
Spot on.
Sorry, Mr. King.
I liked it, but it lost. There's a part in it, I think about halfway through, when I was really invested in it. But then the baddies, they just suddenly lost their power, and you didn't really feel that threat from them at the end. And yeah, it really did run out of steam, I think.
Although steam, that's kind of a pun, given the content. You're on fire.
Yeah,
steam.
Having said that, I think Stephen King at the moment is, on a rich vein of form. I think
I haven't read anything for ages since other than Doctor Sleep. What has been his recent?
So I think after
output?
Doctor Sleep, you had Mr. Mercedes and the whole sort of detective crime with a bit of a supernatural twist trilogy. I really enjoyed all three of them. Second one, bit hit and miss, but I think they're great. Revival. I think you would really like that, actually. Revival. That's
I'll have to get on it.
That's got. I don't want to. I won't even go with the spoilers because I think you should just read it. But yeah, the ending to that I think was really good.
Brilliant.
One of his better efforts. I think 11/22/63, when the guy goes back in time to stop the assassination of JFK. I think that's actually one of my favourite Stephen King's.
Wow.
Probably gets in top 5 for me.
Oh my god!
So yeah, I actually think Stephen King. I think he went through a phase in the kind of 90s and the noughties. What do you say? Noughties.
I say noughties, but then I cringe a bit because it sounds stupid. I feel like we haven't come up with a good name for that.
No, I agree. But I think there was a phase where I think his output wasn't dipped,
or stagnated somewhat.
Actually, the worst book of his, I think, is Gerald's Game, which was I think it was mid-90s, early 90s story. They've actually made a film about it on Netflix.
I feel like I've not read it, but I feel like I've been told about this before.
Apparently, the films. I haven't even watched the film actually because I just really didn't like the book. But it's basically a woman and her husband, they're getting up to some kinky sex game. She gets handcuffed to a bed, then he has a heart attack and dies, and she's basically just fucked. She's stuck. They're out in the middle of nowhere, and it's kind of like
a psychological exploration of her being in that situation.
I just thought the book was really boring.
Yeah, okay.
I really didn't enjoy it, and I think there were a few books around that era, albeit he did write The Green Mile, during that phase, but I think there were a few books around that time that were just a bit baggy.
Yeah, okay. As in the idea didn't necessarily merit an entire
exactly,
novel.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and it's not even that, to be honest, it's not even a particularly long novel for Stephen King. But it was I just found it quite boring.
Yeah, okay.
And I think there were a few in that era. There's another one, The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, and it's about a girl who gets lost in the woods. And it's actually very similar. It was written, I think, 5 or 6 years after. But again, it's quite an easy novel to read. I much preferred it to Gerald's Game, but it's still not. It's similar, I think, thematically to Gerald's Game, but it's just a little bit dull. But then I think he really just sort of came back into form, especially with his crime stuff. I think that seems to be
a new avenue
because he's
for
actually
him.
his latest book is a sort of crime novel, and
I kind of had no idea
with a
about
supernatural
Brilliant.
edge. And yeah, I think they're all really good.
So you alluded there to a top 5 that might have 11, 22, 63 in it.
Yes, it does.
What else would you put in it?
I mean, it's probably quite boring, but you've got to have The Stand, you've got to have The Shining. I think you've got to have It. I really like It. 11/22. It's a tough one. I mean, there are a lot of good novels. Pet Sematary, Carrie.
Go on, I'll push you for a 5th entry.
God.
End on a high note.
I'm going to have to say Gerald's Game. Oh God! You know what? I'm gonna go with. This is a really shit answer, but book 2 of The Dark Tower. I just think it's really good, and then you can kind of draw in the entire Dark Tower.
Nice.
Kind of,
Nice.
So I'm gonna
nicely done.
Yes, I'm gonna do that. Yeah, so I'll have my cake and eat
thankfully
it.
we didn't touch on the Dark Tower film because
terrible. And this, well, as I say, we could talk about that for
whole separate conversation.
And I think I know which way it would go, because if you talk about inconsistent, I think the Stephen King films and adaptations are most certainly inconsistent.
Patchy at best.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah. Well, I propose that we have adequately dissected the topic of the complete works of Stephen King.
I would agree.
And as the sole panellist with the casting vote as to whether he's permitted entry into the newly christened Hall of Pain,
May I just sum up?
Please do. In other words, you'd like to summarise your pitch.
Yes.
Your final opportunity, you know.
While I readily admit and have admitted that Stephen King, I believe, is inconsistent. I think there was a dip in quality, the self-indulgent thing, the sort of repetition of characters. I strongly believe that when Stephen King is good, Stephen King is great. There's very few who can touch him. Those iconic Stephen King novels are just something else. They're just, oh my God, like horrific and just tense and just horrible. He writes a bloody good baddie, I will say that much, like Stephen King. Even in the shittier novels, you've got really horrible, dastardly characters with, a bit three-dimensional as well. And I just think the iconic Stephen King works for that alone, for The Stand alone. I think he's got to be in the Hall of Pain.
So I've pondered it for precisely one whatever that millisecond. There's like a smaller pico little second, and I am honoured, thrilled, horrified to accept him. So Stephen King, you, as I'm sure you are listening to this, I can confirm you've been granted entry. You are currently the sole resident of the Dark Natter Hall of Pain.
Isn't that an honour, sir?
We'll put some sort of jingle over the top of that, like, I don't know, monsters cheering or someone screaming and dying or something.
Your body of work, your entire, your blood, sweat and tears were all worth it, Stephen King.
Yeah, you probably thought your life had been a bit meaningless and a bit wasted, but
you're in the...
you had to resort to just tweeting at Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But no, don't worry. We've revitalised you because you're in the Hall of Pain. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Well, that was a whistle-stop, breakneck whiz around.
Yes, it certainly was.
The complete works of Stephen King. I hope you've enjoyed this first episode of Dark Natter. Does that? I need to work on that.
Yeah.
For next time. Lots of homework to do. Lots of polishing up to be done.
Yeah.
But we've made it through.
You
You didn't murder me. You didn't trigger any of the traps in the flat.
But I am gagging to kill.
We'll nip out and find some sort of...
Why is that my character?
It's got those
murderous.
Because you murdered all those people in the past. So we'll, on that unsavoury note, with a sinister chuckle, that he just won't stop doing, we'll bid farewell to the listeners and see you all again soon.
Join us next time.
Thank you for joining us for the maiden voyage of the HMS Dark Natter. We would love to hear your feedback as we
as we iron out the kinks in our brand new show, so please contact us via email at darknatterpodcast@gmail.com, on Instagram at darknatterpodcast, or on Twitter at dark_natter. We would love to hear your comments, feedback and ideas, as well as suggestions for future entries into the Hall of Pain. Our thanks also go to Ross Budgen for the spine-chilling theme music that you are now listening to. And now I'll leave you in the grip of his sinister synth sounds. Until next time.